Hey everyone. So we're here today to talk to you a little bit about why it was that three good friends with basically no relevant experience were able to come together and start their own alcohol production company. My name's Chase Brooks.
And my name is Mark Finnegan. We are two of the co-founders of the Harvard Cider Company. Today, we want to give you a look into the thoughts and motivations that brought us here.
So in late 2014, Mark and Sam had just moved to Boston where I was living, and we started to reconnect for the first time since high school. I got a call from them one day, and it was different from most calls that I usually got. And there was this tone in their voice, I could tell they thought they were sort of onto something, and they wanted to sit down. They wanted to flesh an idea out with me. So about 24 hours later, we found ourselves in what's now one of our favorite spots to go in Boston, having this discussion that would sort of set the tone for the next chapter of our lives. What they said to me was that they had found this industry that they thought the three of us would make an awesome team to jump into, and that was craft cider. It was booming, it still is today, and this was a really wild idea. It was a shot at a dream. Now, they threw some facts and figures at me and defended their idea, but really I was head over heels from the second they threw this at me. It didn't take much. But I kind of wanted to keep my cool when Sam leaned back in his chair and he looked at me and he asked, "So what did I think?" So, I just looked down at my glass and I took this deep breath and I said, "Well, guys, I really like to drink."
So it's pretty clear we're in the right industry. But furthermore, this is something that we were very serious about and something that we believe that we held the skills to accomplish. Now, I'm not saying we ignored barriers to entry. I think one of the most glaring of which was making cider. But that's why this story meant so much to us. We had this knack for diving in, seeing things that broke and realizing, hey, this is something we can fix on our own, and we had the capabilities of learning how to figure that out. And this is something that's become more and more common with our generation. This is something that we believe is essential to entrepreneurship.
And it's that concept that's important here, more than the story about Harvard Cider Company. It's the fact that we're kind of circumventing this new way to learn. But that being said, the context of how we approach this was important because we had a passion for what we were doing. We had a passion for the alcohol industry. This is an industry that was booming and sort of in an unprecedented way, and continues to. To throw some stats at you, the Brewers Association, something that we're now a part of today, at the end of 2015, stated that there were over 4,200 craft breweries in the country, and in the 2 years prior, that they had captured more than double of the market share. From 2012, we went from taking 10% of the dollars spent to over 19% in 2014.
So a lot of that momentum in craft beer has crept into the craft cider community. There's some big money getting thrown around. Companies like C&C have bought Woodchuck. Boston Beer that runs Angry Orchard, they gave Super Bowl ads this year. So with that momentum, there's been a huge growth in the industry. Between November 2013 and November 2014, the industry grew 75%, and that's when this idea came around for us.
And this industry is representative of a paradigm change, but this idea is representative of a paradigm change, but those usually happen in industries where there's stagnation. And if there's anything that there isn't in the craft beverage industry right now, it's stagnation. This industry is booming, it's expanding, there are more new ideas than there ever have been in the past, and it's generally at its peak. So why did we think we had a new idea? Well, it's because there was something stagnant about that industry, and it's what it took to enter it. It's an industry dominated by those with a lot of experience. People born into families of the trade, people that apprenticed their way in. What we had seen was the start of this small example that it wasn't necessarily the case that you needed that. A small company, well, what was a small company, Down East Cider, they started just 4 years ago, and a group of guys started that company with just a little bit of homebrewing experience out of college. Now they're regional cider giants. Last year, they produced over 500,000 gallons of hard cider.
So we're replacing experience with a willingness to learn. I'm going to butcher this name, but Fred Tuffile, Bentley's entrepreneur program's head, said in an interview with Forbes magazine that millennials are realizing that starting a company, even if it crashes and burns, they learn more in 2 years than 20 in a cubicle. This is due to the recent paradigm change that Chase is referring to. access to information.
So we looked at this Down East example and we're saying, why is this now possible? Why are these people suddenly able to enter this industry? Looking at previous generations who couldn't do this, we're not smarter than them. We're not more determined than them. This is a matter of chance and it's a matter of timing. Now, at the beginning of our little venture, Mark handed me a book that he had just read and I happened to read, and it was totally by chance, but it was called Outliers, and it was written by a guy named Malcolm Gladwell, and he makes the point multiple times in the book that the success of an action is often more determined by the timing of that action than the context of the action itself. This became important to us.
We made countless errors along the way. Bottle bombs, when there's overcarbonation with bottles and they explode. Improper attenuations. We made some bad decisions with flavors as well. Things started to taste like butterscotch. Not our goal, but from these mistakes, we learned something. With each mistake, we had a new question to ask. What happened? Why did it happen? And how can we change that? This was our learning process.
It was surreal how quickly we were developing. It was surreal how quickly we were learning. In the course of a few months after we started homebrewing, I went from somebody that defined any hard cider as two things, either sweet or dry, to somebody that was dealing with it as a sommelier would wine. I was analyzing the ride of a cider. I was kind of focusing on the levels of tannins. I was trying to see what flavor additives were used. I was trying to drink something and tell who made it before I knew, and then try to tell what went wrong. What did they do right? If we were doing this, how could we improve on it? Historically, it would have taken a really long time to get to that point. But today, based on the information we were able to source on the fly every day that we were working, it happened just over a course of a few months. We skipped the apprentice to craftsman to master model.
And now this moves into the formalization of education. Normal tracks that bring you through college or graduate school. This was important because education is an avenue for information. It's a key access point, but no longer is it completely necessary. There are things like Google, where you can go ahead and you can search a question and pretty much any answer is out there. Now, you can go in and you can look at blogs of entrepreneurs, you can email them, you can call. I mean, there was a point where we had a packaging problem and Chase was cold calling head brewers of breweries across the country. And shout out to Willis of Baxter Brewing for helping us out, because that was a question that we would have taken months to figure out, or at least struggled with for such a long time, and he was able to answer it with just a phone call.
So in 18 months, we went from these three guys with a really out there idea that a lot of people would say we had no business addressing, to, as of December, the owners of Harvard Cider Company. And we had a ton of issues along the way.
Absolutely, but when issues arose, we were able to find the answers through things like Reddit. So something's going wrong in a batch. Someone's probably had that error in their basement, or a commercial brewer's run into it in a 50-barrel batch.
So things like this would come up, and we would go online and say, has somebody solved this problem already? And it was often the case that they probably had, but nobody was talking about it yet. And then what we had at our fingertips were communities of people that we could interact with immediately. To this day, a resource we use every day, probrewer.com. You can literally go on there as a member of the industry, ask a question, and then open up a forum discussion of professionals that will be better than any textbook education you could ever source.
So what this is the tipping point in access to information, and this is what allowed us to do the Harvard Cider Company.
So what you're going to see up here is a graph of relevant information to a trade at any point in time, and in this case, it's the past.
So on the left, we've got the y-axis, and it's accessibility to information. Now, we've defined accessibility to information as any relevant information available to anyone interested, but also capable of interpreting it.
And on the right, still on the y-axis here, is the value of that information to the trade you're talking about. And what we need to focus on, it's the value of that information in isolation of whatever business aspect you might be applying it to.
Now, on the x-axis is the caliber of concepts. Now, these are ideas whether they're just figuring them out in the observation phase or innovating on the far right.
Skipped ahead a little fast there, but in the past, like you see here, you have a difficulty to access information, and that's defined by this a non-match of the two sides. The accessibility to information is low. It's difficult from the get-go to get after it. But let's apply this to an example. So in the past, a way that you might be observing this industry is showing up at a pub and ordering a pint of cider. You know where you got it, you know how you got it, you know what it tastes like, but that information has basically zero value to a business or a product.
Now, on the other end of the spectrum is innovation. This could be a wild yeast that's cultivated from a secret source, one that you have proprietary knowledge of and use to make some of the most wonderfully balanced cider out on the market.
So to advance down this curve, you need to get at this information. You need to find it. And during this time in the past, it was really hard to find these sources. It was a teacher. It was experience in a parallel industry or in that industry itself. It was apprenticeship. Maybe, if you were lucky, it was being born into a family of that trade. But it wasn't just going out and finding it. If you didn't have any business in that industry, you probably couldn't get that information.
So present day. Now, this is the tipping point that we've referred to earlier. The challenges of the questions that you're now asking, as an unskilled worker, you can actually answer them on your own without a formal education through targeted research.
Information is getting a lot easier to get at. And you can see the blue curve here. We are so easily, at our fingertips every day is information. It's found in search engines. It's found through databases. It's found through the immediate ability to contact an expert on the other side of the world to ask a question.
And now, we've outlined earlier our observation phase at the bar when we realized this idea.
That phase ended that day at the bar, and the next day started our foray into moving down this curve rapidly. We started to homebrew very quickly. A few small batches in Sam's Alston apartment moved to a multitude of batches in the basement of Mark's parents' home. We were taking obsessive notes. We were learning at a pace that was sort of unprecedented because every problem yielded an immediate answer.
And now, quality control. When we started getting into this, the questions got more advanced. Why were things tasting different? What was that reason behind it? How can we fix it? So it's kind of laughable to me at this point how far we've come. I mean, in November of last year, in my parents' basement, I was taking homebrew tablets and throwing them in without even measuring what I was doing. I was trying to halt the ferment. Bottles were exploding, and I was clearly doing something wrong. Now, at this point, I've dove a little bit into chemistry. And today, I'll take a titration and measure the sulfur dioxide that's present in the liquid, take a gravity measurement as well as a pH measurement, and then I'll go ahead and I'll add the necessary amount of potassium metabisulfite in order to stop it. Do 2 more titrations.
And Mark just used a bunch of big words that absolutely don't matter at all. Because the point is that we went from a pre-homebrew level of experience where we're just like clunking our way through this process to being at a point where our information and our skill had enough value to enter a competitive market and to have a product that was worth something, to be ready to go compete. It happened so quickly that we almost couldn't believe what was going on here.
Absolutely, and one of the most important parts was having a clear and defined goal. As we moved down this curve and began to gain value and knowledge became harder to get, we had to define what we wanted to accomplish.
And the meeting of this curve here, this point in the middle, that's where you see the access to information getting more difficult, but the value growing, and it's a judgment call in the middle of that curve as to when you think you're ready to become a professional. Now, now the goal that Mark just talked about, it was super important, and it was formulated through the best part of your job if you're in the alcohol industry, and that's market research. That involved basically surveying the industry, drinking cider. What was working? What wasn't? Where were the gaps? What needed to be made that didn't already exist?
Now, the Brewers Association that Chase referred to earlier cites sessions, specifically session IPAs and beers, which are balanced and full of flavor. Now, we said that they're the fastest, so the Brewers Association said they're the fastest growing part of beer. So we said balance should be a cornerstone of our recipes.
And so it became. The other thing we were noticing in this parallel industry was just a huge depth of branding, of how things were presented, and that didn't exist yet in cider. Some breweries were using these really radical, almost offensive names paired with really crazy in-your-face graphics to pull people's attention. And sitting next to it on the shelf was this really prestigious-looking bottle, something that looked like it came off of a wine rack or out of Sonoma. We needed to strike a balance here in order to please a lot of different people, and so we kind of developed this word for that, and that was progressive prestige. Now, we decided on this, and we went out looking for somebody that would help us accomplish that because we weren't going to learn cider making at the same time that we learned design and branding of this product on the shelf. And we found a guy. His name was Tim Gibson. His work blew us away, but he was based in Wellington, New Zealand. It ended up not being a problem. Today, Tim has a huge impact on our brand. He's helped build it alongside of us, but we've never shaken the guy's hand. I Skype with him in real time, and we work on this product together, and he sends me things. And it actually works great because when I'm going to bed, he's starting his work day, and if we talk about something, he's got a product for when I wake up. It's amazing.
So we stressed differentiation when we talked with Tim. Color selection was so important to us. Having refined line work in the background as well as tattoo-inspired illustrations in the foreground. This is how we attempted to achieve it, but we weren't able to achieve this on our own. It was Tim's mastery of the subject. He had moved down the curve and his value had increased, and we were allowed to skip our personal advancement by bringing Tim on from the other side of the world.
What I learned from many years spent in an industry I still am in the restaurant industry is that people eat with their eyes first and their mouths last. It's incredible that you can serve somebody a very mediocre drink and with a beautiful garnish, they're floored. So that being said, we took these two really important aspects of a brand and we said that, hey, we have them both. It looks good and it tastes good, but there are a lot of other moving parts to work out. But we think that we're ready to launch.
So building a business is a little bit like a skyscraper. You see it go up quickly. There's a lot of structure that takes place. The information is quick, and it's very easy to take in. Then when the interior gets done, it slows down. It's almost like nothing is making a move forward. Building a business requires the same exact patience. Raw info, structure, and then refinement, repetition, and craft. Eventually mastery, and we hope to be innovating at some point.
Now, what we really want you guys to walk away from after just listening to us ramble about cider is just the fact that it was possible with no experience over a short period of time. And if you have a crazy idea that you feel like is a little bit out there for you to accomplish, but it sounds like a dream, pursue it.
What can you learn to turn that idea into a reality?
Really just get out there, read the blogs of people that are already doing it. Contact the expert 1,000 miles away who can tell you what you're doing wrong. Pick up every book that you can find on your subject. Get after that information.
Take a step, write down why it will work, then take a swing at it.
Thank you.